This video was sponsored by Manscaped. I love their product, the Lawnmower 3.0. I made a whole video about it on my second personal YouTube channel, Zach Schomler. I recommend them. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code CLNS20, CLNS20 for 20% off of your purchases. Max Browne did a podcast, I listened to it the other day, where he opened up about his former football career, his playing days, his journey, and it was quite good. Victoria Garrick has a podcast. Victoria Garrick has a podcast called Real Pod. She's a former USC volleyball player, played at USC, and she's also Max Browne's girlfriend. I didn't want to say Max Browne's girlfriend. I wanted to say, hey, Victoria Garrick's her own person, her own brand, also dating Max. And he's a former USC quarterback, former Pittsburgh quarterback, who was at one point the number one quarterback recruit in America. So Max went on Victoria's podcast and really opened up about his journey. And it's very clear this is a dude talking about the most painful experience in his entire life, really failing as a quarterback in college football. And, you know, he failed at his goals. And that's really tough. He was a number one quarterback recruit in America, and he wanted to become an NFL quarterback. That was his goal. When you're the number one recruit in America, it's believed you're going to get a shot at the NFL. And he lost his job to Sam Darnold at USC. Then he transferred to Pitt. Then he got hurt. He tore his labrum, and he never made it to the NFL. And that's the elevator pitch of Sam Darnold's journey, a painful, tough one. And I just want to say I applaud Max Browne in this podcast for his honesty, for his authenticity. To relive those memories was so clearly painful. He even teared up and cried at one moment. And I have so much respect for Max Browne owning his shortcomings. It's really hard to do. Most former athletes, myself included, have a hard time admitting, like, hey, I wasn't good enough at blank. I didn't have a strong enough arm, or I got beat out, or this or that. It's hard to own that. And it's really easy to be a little bit delusional as a former athlete. Everyone says, you know, back in the good old days, and everyone has that kind of attitude. And refreshingly, Max does not. You know, we as people, as human beings, want to tell stories that make us either sound like a hero or sound like a victim. And Max doesn't do either one. He owns what happened. He owns his failure. He owns his mistake. And I just really want to say, I cannot overstate how impressed I was with Max Browne as a person. You know, Max was, I don't know, he was talking about, again, the most painful thing in his life, taking extreme ownership about how his football career was not what he wanted it to be. And one of my favorite moments in the podcast with Victoria is where he says that he failed in football. And that's a brutal, harsh, ugly thing to say. And even said it makes people uncomfortable. Max said, it makes people uncomfortable when I say that I failed. It's blunt, it's harsh, but he's adamant, and he's right that Max Browne did fail. It's the truth, and the truth is not pretty. It's awful. It's not cool. But the reality is he failed at his goals as a college football player. He never made it to the NFL. He didn't do what he wanted to do from the time he was a little kid, and darn, does that sting. But even though he failed as a football player, Max Browne is not a failure as a person, and it's so clear. When you hear Max talk, I mean, man, the dude's got his head on straight. He got a great career in football somewhere, probably as a broadcaster. And everything he said really spoke to me because he rattles off so much wisdom over and over again. About the 45-minute mark is really where it gets great. And I love how passionate he is. He says, don't lie to yourself. Me, Zach Schomler, I'm a former quarterback. I now work as a broadcaster. There's a reason I'm not playing football anymore. It's painful. It's hard to own. You know what? I wasn't Sam Darnold. Guess what happened? In high school, I played catch with Sam Darnold. I was on the same field as Blake Barnett and Josh Rosen. I was there. I'm their age. And I didn't make it. Me, Zach Schomler, didn't make it. From the Elite 11 workouts to Trent Dilfer, I never became what I wanted to be. My goals never happened. I'm a broadcaster now, working in football still, thank goodness. But I really identified with Max Browne's story about not making it. And, you know, the truth is painful, but man, one of his best lines is the advice saying that you want to pair your passion for your sport with also some self-awareness. And if you can have, I think, man, as a guy who works in sports, it's so great. You may not become the next, Michael Jordan or Messi or Mike Trout. You might not make it doing what you want to do in your sport, but you can still have a future in your sport, whether you're covering it or you're coaching or you're working. I know a guy who works for the Bengals, just working behind the scenes, helping them in their front office. There are a lot of people like that. If you want a job in sports, you can have one, even if you're not Michael Jordan. Let me tell you, I'm so lucky and glad to be around. I guess fortunate's the right word. I'm not lucky. I worked hard to be here. But I'm so happy to work in sports. And Max clearly has a future doing something working in sports. And he also echoed something that I've said a lot on my show, which is that you can't let the good comments get you too high, but you can also never let the bad comments get you too low. You got to be very even keel and steady, getting your value from yourself. And it's interesting. There's a lesson my dad taught me when I was a little kid. He said that your value doesn't come from your performance. Your value is not based on your performance. And it's so important to say, like, hey, I'm valuable as a person, not because of how I perform, but because of who I am and my drive and my work ethic and my passion, the way I fight. And I don't know, I've DM'd with Max Browne a little bit behind the scenes on Instagram. And Max, if you're watching, well done. I'd love to have you on the show, but even if you never come on Strong Opinion Sports, I just want you to know that I'm really enjoying watching your story as a person, the way you've grown, the way you've really made it happen. I'm impressed with you as a human being. And I just can't say enough good things about Max Browne. Again, my value is not based on my performance. It's something my dad always told me. And it's clear Max has learned that. And this whole podcast is an example. It's the Victoria Garrick, the Real Pod with Victoria Garrick. Go find the Max Browne episode. It's a great listen. And you get to watch and hear Max Browne talk about the pain he's processed. And I think there's so many life lessons you can learn from Max. One of a stand-up people in sports that owns his failures, owns his flaws, and I just really love that. Max Browne, well done. Go listen to it. It's great. And I really enjoyed it.